calorie and nutrient strategy to reach your 2021 health goals. Now, a big goal for a lot of people is weight loss, okay? And weight loss is a manifestation of getting healthy. So this is sort of a weight loss program, which we don't do per se. You know, obviously we've had many people lose weight, but really talking about a strategy to improve nutrient density without increasing calorie intake. Matter of fact, decreasing calorie intake. And I think it's going to be intuitive for everybody. But what I have at the end, and I'll make this publication available through some means, through either Get Healthy or whatever, but I have an exhaustive list of charts on nutrient density and the like at the end as reference material for you, for those of you who are really trying to key in on your health. But at the end of the day, you know, it's supposed to tell them, there's an old expression, you tell them what you're going to tell them, you tell them, then you tell them what you told them. And really what I'm talking about today is just a rearrangement of your dinner plate. It's just simply a rearrangement of your dinner plate. And I'll explain the rationale. I have a lot of math in it. Once again, don't ask me spelling questions or things like that, English or grammar. Ask me math questions. And as I was going through this deck this morning, I got bleary-eyed and I said, we're going to kind of skip over the math. But it's just there as an example. So, you know, it's very clear that in longevity studies, the number one thing, and it's not the only thing, I don't know if it's 10% or 50%, but the number one thing is having no insulin resistance. So a really good insulin level. And, you know, in America, I keep threatening to talk about the 26 things that make you and keep you hungry. But it's really true. It's not just one thing. It's not just eating excess carbs. There's a reason behind why people eat excess carbs. Okay, so that's on the list of 26, but there are probably a dozen things under that why someone is stuck eating excess carbs. Okay, and in general, our society consumes too many calories because they consume too few nutrients, for the most part. So you want your insulin number to be below 6, preferably below 4. 1.5 to 3 is probably really, truly optimal, and that's a good thing to get to. So there are a number of different ways you can do that. But, you know, a lot of people don't easily switch to intermittent fasting or a conversion from a lower fat or moderate fat to a high fat ketogenic diet that easily. So what I'm going to talk about here is complete balance, but just rearranging your plate. And then some strategies you can use if you know people, because it's like the old expression, no one here has this problem, but other things you can do to overcome the urge for sweetened food. Okay, and that's a difficult thing. Last time with the glycemic index, we showed MRIs of brains where these dopamine sensories are elevated to such an extent, more so than with cocaine addiction, for example, with the sugars. So, so here's another one. You know, shielding the brain from too much insulin can prolong life. That's one of Bredesen's 6 things about preventing Alzheimer's is glycotoxicity, and it's type 3 diabetes of the brain. And I would argue, based on what Perlmutter talked about, that the brain is much more sensitive long-term to even slightly elevated glucose compared to other tissue because it's so vascular. It's a vascular disease, and that glycotoxicity, you know, insulin is there to keep your glucose in a very narrow range. We could regurgitate this, but simply what we're trying to do is get to a scenario where the foods we're taking in match in terms of absorption our energy needs. And preferably we want to be on the lower end of this. So in theory, that this spike will have more area under the curve than this broad curve. That is, we're taking in fewer calories. We don't need that many calories, actually. We need more nutrients. So let's see, what did we... So here's what I'm focused on. And you know, Dr. Carter's Uber coach, Lisa Myers, is, you know, a vegan, and you know, her husband overcame cancer by going into veganism. And I think someone who's really fastidious about it can do veganism very well, like the Asian Indians. I mean, they probably have the best vegetarian vegan diet, but an American, look, I almost lost my daughter. This gal is like the most strong-willed person you've ever met. She now runs the auto repair shop For Women by Women and is becoming an internet star in San Antonio, Texas. But she decided to go vegetarian, which was a Subway sub with only lettuce in it. Okay, and we believe cashews saved her life, which we sent up to her college because she was in severe anorexia. So there's obviously a way to do veganism and vegetarianism well and not so well. And this presentation is not about vegetarianism or veganism, but it's heading, you know, it's a compromise between traditional eating and that. So, but this is the most important concept I want to talk about today. Most vegetables are concentrated in insoluble fiber, not soluble fiber. Exception to this generalization include cooked potatoes, but potatoes aren't evil unless you're insulin resistant. They're a root crop full of nutrients. And as Amy pointed out last time we talked about this, there are purple potatoes, and we have green potatoes just because, you know, they hang around so long they get moldy, but that doesn't count. You know, there are all kinds of different potatoes. So I was trying to figure out, because I created this a year ago, why I had this slide, but the point is, insoluble carbohydrates aren't going to slip through the gut blood barrier. They're just going to pass through and be excreted. However, since we all want and have good, strong stomach acid, we are breaking these foods down and extracting the nutrients. So the whole point is, when you use low glycemic vegetables, you're getting the preponderance of what you're getting from those foods are nutrients, not calories. And that's not a bad thing at all. So here's my 4 categories of food: processed foods, proteins, high fiber vegetables, and healthy fats. So we all understand that calories do not equal nutrients. I'm reading my notes. You may be eating 3 meals per day and think you're healthy, yet your brain may still be starving and your body is malnourished. How would functional medicine know whether you're malnourished? And I'll give you a clue. I already talked about that marker. And I believe fundamentally your fasting insulin level is a measure of malnutrition. Now, obviously, it's much more complex than that, many, many things. But if you're taking in excess carbs, that's what's raising your insulin. So you're most likely nutrient deficient. So it really is a barometer for nutrient deficiency. And another word for that is malnutrition. Okay, so that's really the term. Now here's where it starts getting a little mathematical. And I tried to make it, you know, these are sort of, these are the profile of how quickly the food is being absorbed. Okay, so healthy fats, let's say 2.5 times more caloric than proteins, processed foods, or carbohydrates. But this is just calories measured in a bomb calorimeter. In other words, not your stomach, not your digestive tract, but I take this device and I burn the material and measure how many calories are given off very accurately. So there's, on a relative scale, what it looks like. And then there's the absorption profile. So the healthy fats, a lot of calories, but they kind of meet our energy demands. That's why they satiate. Proteins actually will be converted, glyconeogenesis, to glucose. So they're a little more glycemic in the sense that, the glycemic index is really about carbs, but we're converting these proteins, excess proteins, to carbs, and we can see this kind of a profile in our insulin. And then, of course, processed foods, they're pre-digested, so it takes nothing to digest and absorb them, and so you see the spike, but it's still only 400 calories, but it's the rate. And then high-fiber vegetables. What we see here is what is digested, healthy fats all, protein all, processed food all, but high-fiber vegetables, it can vary based on the content of the undigestible component. Once again, I think everybody knows this, but just sort of creating a simple strategy for increased nutrients, improving weight loss. So now we got to start thinking about the math here. But what I'm looking at here for these numbers, when you divide a plate up, is not this category, calories, but the digestible or digested calories from that meal. So if we look at a traditional plate and we have healthy fats, 1/3, protein, 1/3, and low glycemic, high fiber vegetables, our total calorie intake is 544 calories. It's a relative thing. I wasn't trying to make it specific to portions or anything like that, just a relativistic thing. Now let's just say we rejigger our plate a little bit so that we have a much larger proportion of the high fiber vegetables, aka nutrient source. And then of course the non-digestible is good for the microbiome. So it's a double win or triple win. And then we reduce the amount of protein. Unless you're a bodybuilder, we're probably taking in way more protein than we need. I didn't do the research on this today, but I have in the past to see what you really need. And most people need 3 to 4 ounces of protein a day or less, depending on your sedentary activity stature. And then the healthy fats, healthy fats are really important to the brain, but the brain is only 2.5% the mass of the body. So you don't need huge amounts of it unless you're eating an inflammatory diet and we're trying to counteract the inflammation from the corn oil and the French fries and, the omega-6s in the fast foods, the soybean oils at the traditional, the box store restaurants and things like that. So what we've done here is we have the same volume and same mass of food, but we reduced our calories from 544 to 268. Okay, cut it almost in half. And if you can do that day in and day out, and a pound is 2,500 calories in a year, just by switching the ratio on your plate, you've lost 15 pounds. Rather than gain 15 pounds, because most people's plate do not even look like this. So it's a big transition for a lot of people. So benefits: reduced protein is less kidney stress and lower blood sugar. Healthy fats, lower inflammation, improves brain function. Low glycemic reduces calorie intake, maintains nutrients, repair and recovery. And the full plate satisfies expectations for a full meal. We're very visually oriented. And I remember my sister had this fruity tooty friend, and my brother is just a total, well, what do I say about him? But, truculent individual. And for some reason, he had a soft moment. We were in Cambridge, and we went to a tapas restaurant. And we got these 2 little dollops of lamb. And my brother looked at this and said, "Oh, brother." And then at the end, we called it the meal that will live in infamy, because he spent $250 for like 5 people, and he left the restaurant, extraordinarily hungry. 25 years later, he's still talking about the meal that'll live in infamy. So, like, if he had the same number of calories, but his plate was full, then it probably wouldn't have had that Pavlovian type of response to that situation. Full plate satisfies expectations. Flavor. Herbs, spices, salt, and fat satisfy food cravings and satisfaction. I'll talk about that in a minute. And vegetables often cost less compared to other food groups. Not always, but if you're judicious. Is there anything out there cheaper than cabbage? I can't. I mean, well, Dr. Carter buys celery by the truckload, and I'm sure he struck a deal with the farmers in California. Direct pipeline. So we talked about the glycemic index. We don't have to cover that again, but I'm going to go over the glycemic. I'm going to give you some glycemic resources here that go above and beyond. And a lot of it is USDA and FDA. You know, there are some chemists, if you will, in the skunk works actually doing good work testing out this stuff. So let me just make sure. Okay. So here's something underappreciated. So most of us are stuck addicted to sugar. So how do we go to, avoid the sugar, avoid the processed foods? I don't think it's hard to increase your plate with vegetables when you have, you had a balanced plate before and you're eating your protein, you're eating your healthy fats, and you're eating your vegetables. Just changing that plate's not the big switch. The hardest thing is going from the sugar addiction. So here's a little article. Texture is the final frontier of food science. So if you're working with someone that has a real hard time reducing the calorie intake or switching towards something healthier, I always think about the Indian restaurant, and some people don't like the strong, spicy flavor, but we actually thoroughly enjoy that, and it's something that now is very, very satisfying, all that spice and the hotness. So we have flavor, we have salty, we have sweet, we have creamy, and we have spicy. So sweet is only 1/4 of that equation. So if we can start switching towards salty, salt's been demonized, but we need salt. We need salt to run the batteries in our body. We need salt to support the brain. We just need potassium as well. So it's pretty easy to get high potassium foods, the 5 foods that are highest in potassium, things like kale and spinach, beans, squash, mushrooms, and avocado. Easy to get that. Temperature. Ramona, you mentioned my mug, and I've been having to sit here. So now my huge mug of coffee is lukewarm. Not liking it. But simple things can make the food much more palatable. So temperature. No one wants lukewarm coffee. No one likes microwave food where it's been, it's hot somewhere and cool someplace else. So, what this really speaks of is the way we commune nowadays. And the meal is an afterthought from a busy schedule. We're eating in the car, we're eating standing up, we're not eating together, we're not taking the time, we're not starting off with a little prayer to kind of like set the tone for it. So our food is like, who knows what temperature it is. Herbs and fats, they have an aroma. Texture related to fat content, creamy versus crunchy, smooth, lumpy, sticky, crispy, crumbly, hard, tough, fibrous, chewy. All these things can contribute to the acceptability in our own mind of the palatability of something. Jasmine made 2 pumpkin pies yesterday, and I'm looking on the counter, or 2 days ago, and she has this bowl with pumpkin pie, mixture. And I'm saying, what are you going to do with that? She says, well, it's old. And I said, remember me? I'll eat anything. And so she made these little pumpkin pie cupcakes with, she quickly threw together some sort of an almond gluten-free flour crust in the little cupcake, and it was absolutely delicious. And we sweeten with molasses, stevia, and maybe a little honey. So yeah, it's still sweeter. It's still a dessert. But compared to traditional desserts, what I love about pumpkin pie is the creamy texture. And that's what really, no matter how sweet it is, the texture is what I really like about it. So we're almost done the main talk. You know, you saw this last time. Eat foods low in the glycemic index, eliminate sugar, eliminate processed foods. Eat fewer proteins and modest healthy fats. Fats are a fuel for the brain. But when you do that, if you follow this simply, then your plate inevitably looks this way. And this is more sustainable weight loss where you're losing 15 pounds a year, not one of these quick loss 15 pounds in 15-day kind of thing where your insulin level most likely has not changed. So you're fighting an uphill battle to stay there. So now here are some resources, published peer-reviewed articles. You don't have to look at them now. It's going to be hard. Let's see if I can enlarge it. If I enlarge it, it's going to go crazy, so I'm not going to. I'm going to be chasing the screen. But so here is a list of dietary fiber versus a whole bunch of foods. So it's not just glycemic index. That measured it somewhat, but it's the dietary fiber amount that's probably fundamental to that. Here's more dietary fiber data, USDA, and I don't know what CSF. Oh, that's a British report. So just some resources for you. We go even further. I don't know what anybody eat lotus root? It's at the top of the list for all these things, for energy, fiber, all that kind of stuff. I've never had it before. Don't know much about it, but once again, an exhaustive list of how much energy the food provides, so how much digestible carbohydrates, if you will. More on energy with the references, so you can go and look at the actual references and read it for yourself. Once again, I'll publish this slide deck somehow in our chronic disease support group. Here's vitamin C per food. Bitter cucumber at the top, broccoli right there, mustard leaf, Chinese kale, pea shoots, sweet peppers. A hairy gourd. They need to change the name of that food. Just like Dr. Barodi, Crapsel. No, thank you.
Right.
Not appetizing.
Not at all.
More on vitamin C. Some of these things may be high glycemic, so you're not seeing that on this list, so you got to kind of couple them together. Here's another view on glycemic index as a resource. So snacks, glycemic index, dairy, sweeteners, veggies, fruits, cereal, grains. I thought this was very well done. Drinks. I'm not going to tell my wife that the glycemic index of red wine is only 15. Therefore, she can have 6 glasses a night. No, she does. She's no lush. But she's always wondering where her wine goes. But I kind of follow her around. We've now found out a use for the COVID-19 masks, because we seem in Tennessee have a lot of fruit flies, so we're covering the wine glass with the COVID-19 mask. Finally found high value for the mask.
There you go.
It's bringing a lot more joy, a lot more calm, reducing hormones, all that stuff, the stress, cortisol, because the wine is without little swimmers. Very important. More glycemic index information. And then we have digestible calories by percent, so on and so forth with the reference. Omega content. And so what's good about this is it's hard to see. I remember it, indeed, the omega-6 to omega-3 ratio. And like artichokes, I go to Aldi's and buy their artichoke in a jar, pickled artichoke or pickled artichoke salad. And I put that on all my salads. I've been doing that for quite a while. So they have a very good ratio, 2.66 to 1. Asparagus, a very good omega-6, omega-3 ratio, 2.62 to 1, so on and so forth. So this is pretty good. Carrots raw and carrot juice, fairly high in omega-6s, but once again, if you're taking your cod liver oil, it's all about balancing it off so you can eat your carrots. So I think this is a particularly good chart because particularly for people that are truly in a vegan diet, you want to be optimizing your omega-3 values. So there it is. Happy to see, oh, no, beets aren't that good. Oh, well, but that's all right. I love me some beets. And then broccoli flowers, broccoli stalks, Brussels sprouts actually have more omega-3 than omega-6s according to this data. And then lastly, sort of a comprehensive evaluation of nutritive content in 100 grams of raw from fruits and vegetables, and looking at energy, protein, fats, carbohydrates, fiber, calcium, iron, magnesium, phosphorus, potassium, sodium, zinc, copper, manganese, vitamin C, and vitamin A. So once again, for those of you that are more optimal health minded, these charts may be useful. And I think the bottom line, what I learned from the folks at Allotest, is that rotating foods, I think, is extremely important, particularly to fight off allergies. And, it's interesting, though, I wrote on the French paradox, which really is an American paradox, and they tend to eat the same 12 foods all the time, but maybe that's a generalization. I really don't have their food diary, but I think it's important to rotate, and this could be a good guide for you in terms of making those decisions. What we're doing is we're just making a lot of salads these days and just changing up what goes on the salads, the cucumbers, the mushrooms, the white onions, the yellow onions, the red onions, all kinds of different things, the mix, cabbage in the salad, and you make our own dressing with olive oil and red wine vinegar, and then I use what's called it'll come to me, but it's a seaweed multi-spice condiment from Bragg's, and I just pound that into that mixture. I'm too lazy to go for this jar and that jar and that jar. I have my one little one from Bragg's, and it has sea vegetable components and regular herbs and spices, sea spices and regular spices. Put that in my red wine vinegar and olive oil, or I might use avocado oil or a mixture if they're within hand's reach, and make my own salad dressing. It takes 2 seconds. I'm a real lazy chef, but anyway, that's the topic for today. And the bottom line is, I'm not pro-vegan. I'm not against it. I'm against Michael Greger because he's the ultimate at evidence-biased presentations to promote veganism. But there's nothing wrong with veganism or pescatarianism, or just adding a small amount of some of the things you need. Yes, I think we're getting too much protein. We can probably go, if we get a small but consistent portion of healthy fats, our brain's going to be good. And then the rest is a vegetable diet on top of that. And I will do my best to get this up today. And I guarantee this will improve your health. And I guarantee you'll lose weight if this is the main thing you're doing, particularly if you're doing some intermittent fasting and this is the composition of the meal. at the end of that fast. Dr. Carter, any comments?
Nope. Great presentation. Yeah.
I paid him for that. Thank you. Anything from the peanut gallery? Speaking of the peanut gallery, I see her face poised to say something. Please, Amy.
I agree with everything you said today.
I mean, it's not rocket science, right? And most of you out there know these things, but I think, I enjoyed putting it in the context of caloric intake. And I would argue that this plate has the same, if not more, nutrients, because whenever you take in a nutrient you don't need, it's a wasted nutrient. So we don't need that much protein. We don't need that much in the way of healthy fats. Yeah, we need some baseline level, but dividing the plate up like this probably does this. So in this case, we're really optimizing the nutrients you need in your system while keeping calories in check. Now, I don't think anybody should be rail thin. When you look at the studies on longevity, and it's a generalization, people that are on the thin side of normal diet the same rates as someone that's a morbid obese side. So, we need to have fat on our bodies, and so I'm not opposed to taking in excess calories to make sure we have fat storage, as long as we do it in an intelligent way that we maintain our insulin between 1.5 and 3.
I gotta work on that. I wish more people would talk about the digested calories versus just straight up calories. Because my son is all he looks at is calories, and I don't think he's getting enough fats, and he's young. So, but I can't seem to convince him. But he just looks, oh, that's too many calories. I'm not going to eat it. And it could be something extremely nutrient dense. And he's a healthy eater, so he doesn't eat junk. But I think he definitely needs more fats, and I need a good argument to give him. I don't know how to do that, but.
Well, there are plenty of studies out there, particularly in the bodybuilder world, where the ketogenic diet is very beneficial to muscle development and things like that. So if you have trouble finding some of those references, Amy, which I don't think you will because you're sending me references that I haven't found, but I told the story that where my program was overlapping, or mine and Dr. Carter's program was overlapping in a company with a weight loss program that was strictly designed to lower calories with no nutritional content and no consideration for the health of the individual. And we had people saying, I'm not going to take that much cod liver oil because it's 50 calories.
Yeah.
And then the sicker of that population got worse because we measure it accurately. So it's very clear the 4 sickest people in that group at the end of the 6 months or 9 months when we remeasured them, their chronic disease temperature was worse because they reduced nutrients. They reduce calories and the nutrients that go along with it. And in a sick body, that is a bad plan. Bad plan.
And the other thing that I do, I recommend all of my patients doing a micronutrient test. People are quite amazed that even if they quote unquote eat healthy, because the test that I do actually shows the nutrients at the cellular level, which is the most important realm, not just in the serum that you can get at LabCorp or Quest or what have you, but you want to know what's in the white blood cells, what's in the red blood cells, because that's where all the action is happening. So if those levels are low, which are very common in individuals, it is showing that you are not absorbing well. So do you have undisclosed leaky gut, or just absorption issues? Do you have H. pylori, which, can lead to decreased HCl, the hydrochloric acid production. In addition, of course, if you're taking, the proton pump inhibitors or any of those things that stop the acid production, that is also, affecting your absorption. So, you might be eating the best diet, in the world, but if you're not absorbing any of it, you're still behind the 8 ball.
Any other questions? We might end in record time today. Who would have thunk it? So next week, we're going to talk about more chronic disease temperature labs, those in particular that are predictive of cancer and cancer prognosis, not just of the likelihood of getting cancer, but if you have it, what your odds are of survival based on, current knowledge. So.
I have a question that's not, may I ask a question?
Linda, absolutely.
Okay, it's about celery juice. So, and Dr. Carter, I think that's right up your alley. So I've tried the celery juicing it several times, even starting at small amounts. I've transitioned to cucumber juice because I heard that that's a step down, but what they do is just cause me to belch and belch and belch and creates more acid, which is kind of the goal of it. But I'm wondering what's going on, and do I just have to acclimate my body to it, or any thoughts?
Yeah, I think over time, you do have to kind of acclimate. One thing, if it continues for a longer period of time, we might want to do a food sensitivity test. So, because people, are sensitive to quote unquote healthy vegetables, right? Because you have leaky gut. So, but yes, that's one of the, common things that happens when you're doing, celery juice. I drink 32 ounces of celery juice a day.
Oh my God.
And I also drink the combination of celery juice, cucumbers, beets, ginger, apples, and carrots. So I do about 16 ounces of that. So, so I really like the juicing aspect because that's easier. And I also do, smoothies with kale and blueberries and, protein powders and stuff like that. But yeah, with the belching and what have you, might want to look at doing a gut test, or if you don't want to go that far, utilizing the I really like the Megaspore line of products. They're prebiotic supplements, the spore forming probiotic, and the what is called mega mucosa, because that really helps to heal the gut with its immunoglobulin content. So,
Michael,
you guys just kind of play around with it. How long have you been doing the celery juice?
Me? Well, I'm not doing it now. I've tried like 3 times in the past, and I'll do it for a week or so.
Okay.
And I only start at maybe 8 ounces.
Okay.
But I do know that I have SIBO. I do know I have intense digestive issues.
Okay.
So maybe it's not the right time to do that. Or
yeah. So addressing the SIBO, so from a lot of different arenas. It depends on how bad your SIBO is, whether you need to go down a very deep pathway. But I also like a supplement called Atrantil. That was developed by a GI specialist. That works really, really well for both types of SIBO, both the diarrhea and constipation type.
Mm-hmm.
But that's a great supplement to help to balance the microbiome.
Okay, great.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Michael, how much undigestible fiber do you think is in the celery juice? Is most of that removed?
No, there's no fiber in it. So, that's supposedly the benefit of doing the celery juice. You get the sodium cluster salts, and they have their own benefits in reducing toxic loads, as well as again, supposedly beneficial effects in reducing the viruses, especially Epstein-Barr virus. So,
okay, yeah, I just wondered why that would cause, gas or whatever, so it's not really fermented. Anyway, Okay, folks.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Once again, thanks very
Have a
much.
good day.
See you
Thank
soon.
you so much.
Bye now.
Both of you. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.